Well, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is our very first webinar event, and we're welcoming you from the Anti-Racism Commitment Coalition, or ARC. And I am Donzel Leggett, the founder of the Anti-Racism Commitment Coalition. And ARC is a coalition of dedicated people that are committed to eradicating racism and spreading anti-racism all over the world. This is a very, very special day for us because I developed the idea to start ARC about a month after the tragic murder of George Floyd in downtown Minneapolis, only about 30 minutes from my home. Immediately following that horrific incident, I was inundated with many emails and texts and communications from well-intended people telling me how sorry they were, how sad they were, and how their hearts went out to me. Unfortunately, the more I received these messages, the more angry I got. I was angry because I felt like they were just sorry for me because I was Black. Instead of acknowledging and being willing to take action against what I considered the omnipresent structural and systemic racism that exists in our communities, and also the unconscionable and inhuman treatment that Black and brown people have been suffering every day around this country and that we've witnessed far too many times. George's killing was just another egregious example of this continuous cycle of racist ideologies and policies that have been choking people of color for centuries and poisoning the conscience of all the people and making racism feel mainstream as well as hate. I felt that it was time for all of us to take real action to break this cycle of racism and hate. So I came up with the idea of creating an organization in which everyone and anyone could take action and make a real impact by first transforming themselves to be anti-racist, and then transforming the people in their personal networks to be anti-racist as well. ARC is here to help you transform in this journey by providing a path to follow, a process to help you, resources to support you, as well as a network of people to inspire you. Today's event is a great example of the support that ARC is here to provide. Check out our website for additional resources and content, and look for other upcoming events. Join our coalition and become part of the movement that will change the world. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to the host for today's webinar. His name is Jeremiah Cox, and Jeremiah is an incredible young man. He's a college student at Hastings College in Hastings, Nebraska. I began working with Jeremiah when he contacted me because he wanted to write an article for the local newspaper about the impact of race in our communities and what we as citizens should be doing about it. I asked Jeremiah to help with the Anti-Racism Commitment Coalition, join ARC, and really help get our message out. Jeremiah has been one of our best and key members of our marketing department as part of ARC. In fact, he leads our social media group specifically focused on Instagram. And if you've seen any of Jeremiah's posts, you know he does a fantastic job of building awareness and creating energy, passion, and inspiration. Jeremiah planned this event today. He coordinated this event, and we're really looking forward to this fantastic webinar today. Next, it's my honor to introduce you to George Floyd's uncle, Mr. Selwyn Jones. Now, Selwyn is one of the only 4 Black residents in a small South Dakota town. After George's passing, Selwyn became a civil rights activist, speaking out all around the country and demanding change, even in his hometown. Mr. Jones demanded that the Confederate flag, which was on the city's police insignia, be removed. Now, this seemingly simple request ended up with Mr. Jones being viciously attacked by his white community members. Yet he continues to still fight for justice, fight for awareness, fight for racial change. We're all inspired by his work, and we're eager to hear from him today, hear more about his story, and learn more about how we can help eradicate racism and spread anti-racism. I'll turn it over to Jeremiah now to start our webinar.
Thank you for the introduction, Donzel. And truly, Selwyn, it is an absolute honor for me to be able to be here and speak with you. And I'm just overjoyed to be able to learn from you and to hear your story and your journey as inspiration.
It's absolutely my pleasure, man. That intro from Denzel almost got me crying, almost made me weep. That was beautiful. So you make sure that he gets all of my info, because me and him could probably do some things together.
Absolutely. We'll make that happen. Now, before we get into questions, for everyone who's watching, about halfway through our time, we'll open up the floor to an audience question and answer. And so as we are going here, you can use the little Q&A Zoom feature and submit your own questions as we go. So then we can answer them later on throughout the call.
Jeremiah.
Yes?
Yeah, we got to get my boy, got to give a shout out to Mr. Otis Harper.
Yes, and then halfway through, Otis Harper, he is a podcaster and a licensed attorney in New Jersey and Connecticut. He will be helping us moderate the Q&A discussion. And he and Donzel know each other from, actually, since George Floyd was killed, Otis and Selwyn crossed paths, and then they've been working together ever since, and they've become really close friends. And Otis has been moderating these discussions with Selwyn for a number of months now.
It's a pleasure to join everyone here. I'm thankful, I'm grateful that I've been a part, to be a part of it, and to be invited. And, you know, my goal here is just to help in any way I can get the message of George Floyd out, and the message that his uncle wants to get out. So I'm going to leave it to you, Jeremiah. I may jump in here or there, but it's your show, and I want you to, you know, make sure you ask the questions that you want the answers to.
All right. Well, Mr. Selwyn, I'd love to start by talking just about your nephew, George Floyd. So what kind of a relationship did you have with him?
Jeremiah, I'm that uncle. I'm the crazy uncle that beat up all of his nieces and nephews. And he's my buddy. He's my boy. You know, I've got 6 or 7 people named after me in my family. Everybody's taken that Miles name because of sports. Because I was pretty decent back in the day. You know, and his whole life, we grew up poor. You know, we grew up in a house with no running water, you know, no indoor plumbing. So we come from hard times. And one thing that you have when you come from hard times is you don't miss things that you don't have because you never had it. And one thing that we've always had was love. So our relationship was built on love and respect, because I was his uncle. And just a wonderful soul. Laughed a lot, wanted to show his teeth. And let's get this straight. Nobody's perfect in this world. And obviously he made a couple of mistakes, but he paid for his mistakes. So, you know, he was trying to get his life back going. He moved from Houston to Minneapolis, where things were going good. And one day, everybody had a bad day. Derek Chauvin had a really bad morning, obviously.
And so after George was killed, his story garnered international and national attention, and it was the focus of everyone's consciousness for weeks, months. But that he was suddenly memorialized after he was died. So what was he like when he was alive? How do you want him to be remembered?
You know, I reckon Jeremiah, Otis will probably agree with me. It isn't how he lived, because obviously he wasn't perfect, and people make plenty of mistakes. The life we're talking about is the 8 minutes and 46 seconds of death. That's where we want to remember George Floyd, because reality is this: there's been a lot of civil rights movements in the world. This is by far the biggest civil rights movement of all time. And it literally came I'm the unluckiest person in the world. I had a Harvard mathematician call me, reach out to me like you did, and told me, what's the chances of me having a nephew that got murdered by a police officer in the middle of the street? So I was the unlucky guy that day, but I always look at it this way, man. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm mad at how the system was created, because the system was created wrong. The system was created to protect the white folks from the slaves, so they had to sort of kind of have security. And our system sucks. We are going to figure out a way to make a difference, obviously. But my nephew, good person, good soul. Decisions is what I know in life. If we make the right decisions, life goes the way it's supposed to. And it only takes one bad decision to change the outcome of your life. The bad decision that was made on May the 25th was Derek Chauvin decided that he would be jury, judge, and executioner, all in about 15 minutes. But the 8 minutes and 46 seconds is what we saw as probably the most devastating thing we've ever seen. We've seen a man, a 6'7", 245-pound muscle man, get controlled, dominated, disrespectful, showed hate, showed racism, showed power. That's the reason why we're having this conversation today.
Can I ask you a question, Selwyn? Let me jump in here for a second. Why do you think that Derek Chauvin took that position that he took? Was there any history behind he and George's relationship? Because I've heard some things, but I'm just curious to know and curious to understand what would make an individual come to this position where he decides that he's going to be judge, jury, and executioner.
You know, man, they worked at the same nightclub. It'd be hard to work at the same place, and one works inside and one works outside for 3 years and not have any kind of confrontation. My nephew was just like me, Otis, laughing, joking, full of vigor, you know. And racism, power, control, because everything was even until Derek Chauvin hit the scene. So in my mind, there was a pre-existing situation between them, because honestly, man, he got out of the car and he went right to work. He showed what the old slave master showed back in the day. You do what I tell you, how I'll tell you, or else I'll punish you. And you know, for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. If anybody has ever seen the lynching photos, take a look, and you'll see Caucasian people standing beside 5 or 6 black people in the teens, in the 20s, in the 30s, and they're proud of their kill. And at the end of probably at about the 9-minute mark, he put his hand on his leg, obviously to get more pressure, but he looked like, I got him under control. He's mine. There's nothing he could do. Now imagine this, y'all. Imagine being in a situation. I've only seen the video one time, but I've seen bits and pieces. And imagine being in a situation when he was looking back, looking with petrified in his eyes. Imagine not knowing, being a black man in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where this cat has committed 18 violations, obviously, and not imagining what's about to occur, but you know it's not going to be anything good. Imagine that. Imagine being on the ground in a situation that he was, and there's nobody that can help you. You scream, you fight, you beg, you plead, then you die because of somebody's show of systemic racism, power, and control. It's a bad situation. Us being a black man would be scared if we got stopped in the dark by a cop. No matter, we don't even have to see what color he is. But if a cop throws his lights on us, get hot, we are going to ride. If you're smart, you're going to ride until you get to the light. You know, and that's horrific, because this guy did it in the middle of the day, 6 o'clock, middle of summer.
So it sounds like you're hoping that the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that George had to suffer and endure will have a much broader impact on the world, and this will instigate some sort of broader change. And so, in the most ideal world, what would that change look like? What would his legacy in 10, 20, 30, 50 years be?
You know what, Jeremiah? The reason why we're here today is because of my confidence and my impression upon you. Like I said, I've got to give mom and daddy a shout out. It's hard to see an 18-year-old young man come with the vigor and energy and enthusiasm that you came at me with when we communicated on the phone. So I reckon what I'm pretty much telling you is if we can get a lot of Jeremiahs, if we can get a lot of people around Jeremiah, I know you'll handle your situation. It starts with you. It starts with y'all. You know, you haven't had babies. A lot of y'all have you haven't been tainted. So y'all can teach your babies. Oh, I know your baby's cool, man. You ain't got to say anything. And I know grandmama and grandpapa going to take care of him. But y'all can teach your babies that instead of when you see a pretty black woman, wow, that's a pretty black girl. Or that's a pretty white girl. What about that's just a pretty woman? That's just a pretty girl. So we don't have to signify what is what, you know? We don't have to be jealous or angry because somebody has more. But we're not talking about what we have. What we're talking about is the color black. Our whole lives, our whole existence, we have been on the bottom of the barrel. Thomas Jefferson, Madison, Abraham Lincoln, they wrote things, hey, a black man is supposed to be beneath us. A black man's job is to work and be controlled by us. You know, man, think about this, Jeremiah. You get beat, you get whipped, you get choked, you make them rich, you raise their kids, you cook their food, you do everything that is asked of you. If not, you get beat. What am I? I'm a black man. What did we do to deserve all of the violent treatment that we've gotten?
Well, so let me jump in here and let me ask you this, because one of the things that I hear a lot of people who happen to be white express is that how do you start? And I would pose this question, Jeremiah, too. Where does anti-racism start, and what does that term mean, not only to you, Selwyn, but to you, Jeremiah? And how do you recommend to people, not just white people, but other people, whether they're Indian, Asian, Caucasian, Black, how do we advance the message of anti-racism versus just, you know, everybody seems to say, and I've heard this, nobody's a racist, but racism exists. You know, it's fascinating to me that you hear nobody's going to admit openly that well, very few people will admit openly that they're a racist, but racism somehow continues to exist and has existed. So what do you tell people of other races, and how do you become anti-racist?
You do what we're doing now. You're doing what we're doing now. You've organized groups that feel the same way, that have the same thoughts and the same feelings, because let's be real, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, you know? And there's a lot of people that racism isn't a gene. It is a taught dynamic. That means grandpapa taught daddy, daddy teaches you, you teach your son. So we've got to stop that system somewhere. And young fellows, young people that we're communicating with now, Otis, they're going to be the leaders of the free world. Our kids, we are fighting for to not to have to go through this. You know, because I know you've been fighting your whole life. I've been fighting my whole life, exceptionally, because I come from down south. And George has made a dent, because, how would I say, in every other way in life, you gotta crawl, you got to walk, you got to run. George gave us an opportunity, Otis, Jeremiah, to walk fast because everybody was sitting around their house. The coronavirus, it's killed 2 million people. You know,
that was my question. Let me jump in here real quick, Sal, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to interrupt you because, you know, we've seen Michael Brown, we've seen Freddie Gray, we've seen these young Black Americans be killed, and I use the term young Black Americans because that's what they are. They're young Black Americans. And then all of a sudden, George Floyd comes along, he's killed in broad daylight. And why do you think that his, it was like, and you can,
pandemic.
I'll let you explain it. Why do you think his death took such a hold on not only the United States of America, but the country as a whole?
You, your mama, your cousin, Jeremiah's mom's cousin, grandpapa, auntie, little JJ down at the market. Everybody has been sitting in their house for 5 or 6 months. What have we had to do since November? Sit and wonder what's this deadly coronavirus is going to do. So we were quarantined in our homes. So everybody in the world was sitting in front of their television. Over 360 million people seen that video in a 48-hour span. So it was out of a bad scenario, bad situation, it was needed. And like I tell people all the time, you know, I'm not mad at people. I'm not mad at man. I'm mad at the system. But my nephew sacrificed his life. His life was taken as that sacrificial lamb so we could change the world. And that's literally what he did. You've got people, I've done interviews all over the world, people I can't even speak the language, but you can speak hurt, you can speak pain, you can speak I'm tired. And a lot of people are tired of the way that the system's been going. And I just don't think that people seen it, people thought about racism, but seeing my nephew suffer, be controlled out of anger, hate, and the color of his skin for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, it made a lot of people sit back and think, wow. And we were talking earlier, the last person I would expect to have any emotions or feelings are people in their 65s or 70s, because that's when racism was really did. Because think about this, 2 generations from them, most of their family was the KKK members, obviously. But when you have a 75 and a 78-year-old young gentleman give you a call and said, thank you for leading this path. When you have parents like Jeremiah's parents that are so gracious and humble, that have raised a young man like this that's leading this charge, how can you not say that we haven't made a change? You know, and we just started. But the change happened on May the 26th, May the 25th, at about 7 o'clock. The whole world had a ringside seat to see a grown man get controlled, humiliated, ashamed, then murdered.
I agree, Selwyn, and I think that the pandemic significantly contributed to the extent to which people had to see, and they couldn't just switch off to some sports channel because there were no sports at that point.
There were no sports.
Yeah. Yet I've seen in the months following Mr. Floyd's death, a lot of white people have disengaged. There was initial outrage, but then it seems like a lot of people have just kind of become passive and grown complacent. So first of all, why do you think this is? And then second, why should white people keep engaging in this fight?
Okay, Otis, I'm gonna answer a first part and you get the second part.
Okay.
Jeremiah, this is how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
Things that happen in the world, they have a life, a shelf life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther King, shelf life, but yet we're still talking. And that started 60 years ago.
Mm.
That means that there's something. A lot of people like to walk the walk, but a lot of people like to talk the talk, but they don't want to walk the walk. And yeah, you could see the emotional, you know, the month or two, there's a lot of people emotional, worried about it, thinking about it. But guess what? We all got to go back to our side and come home. And most Caucasian people's thoughts and how they were taught was hey, you know what? It's just another dead black guy. Let's be real.
Mm.
So what? Hey, we spoke our mind. We helped the cause. We gave our opinion. This journey that we're on is not a 2-week journey. It's not a 4-month journey. This is a lifetime commitment to change things and make the world different or better. I'll just answer that one.
Listen, I'm going to agree with you. Obviously, the pandemic contributed to people being available. I do agree with you to some extent that the movement is kind of slowed down. And I was talking to Jeremiah earlier about this. Because of the election, because other people have other things going on, and it becomes a level of fatigue, if you will, which, the death of an innocent person should never garner a level of fatigue. It should always think that there are a lot of people out there that are fighting against and fighting for justice. It's sad that in 2020, we're still talking about racism, equality, and equal justice for all people in what is purported to be the greatest nation of the world. It's also sad that we're sitting here, so concerned about democratic and elections, which people purport to be the greatest democracy in the world. But we have concerns about our own democracy. But that's neither here nor there. I'll question from the Q&A from Elisa Faust. She says, what do you think would be the best thing to change the police and their interaction with black people? I'll leave that to you, Selwyn.
We don't need to change their interaction with black people. We need to change their interaction to people in general, because let's get this real, my dear. This isn't a black thing. This isn't a white thing. This is a us thing. But unfortunately, black people have been taking the front lines of hatred and bigotry. Think about this, dear. There's 2.3 million people that are imprisoned in the United States. Keep in mind, we imprison more people than anybody in the world. Out of that 2.3 or 4 people that in prison, 978,000 of them are black. Now, how can 12% of the population create 40% of the crime? That's just unbelievable. And people say that there's no racial profiling. Well, I guarantee you take a Caucasian person, you take a black person, let them do 60 miles an hour in a 45 miles an hour zone, and I can promise you, the black person will get stopped first. There has been a hard world, hard life that we have lived in because we are African Americans. And, we got to get a break sooner or later. And I think my nephew gave us an opportunity to have a break. We just have to stick together. And, like this group that Jeremiah is in, start your own group on campus. But there's always a way to keep your voice heard. And as long as you keep talking, change will come. The problem is when people stop communicating and they stop talking, and this goes on the second page of the newspaper. Well, let me tell you, there's no way in the world I'm ever going to let this be second page news, because it gave us an opportunity to see the wrongdoings of a certain race over one race. And if people didn't believe it, well, people see it, and they saw it now.
And so I don't think we're not going to take the position that all white people are bad, or that all white cops are bad, or all cops are bad. We're not sitting here purporting that position. But what I think we're saying in the message is one of equality, and how the police training and how to interact with all people. I've had several interactions with police. I've also been a person who tried to, I've applied for law enforcement positions on several occasions. I wasn't fortunate enough to get it, but for another reason. But I did learn a lot in those experiences. And, it's interesting. I watched a video recently of a young man who just recently got shot, and I questioned his interactions. Not that there was anything to question with George, but we all have an accountability, and if we can all treat people with respect, I think the world's a better place.
Treat people like you want to be treated, man. And unfortunately, because of how the system is invented or created, everybody wants to go home. Let's get real. Everybody wants to go home. I want Mr. Police Officer to go home to his babies and his wife, you know, in the house with the picket fence. So we've got to have some kind of legislation where if you harm a suspect, you're just as guilty as the suspect. But we need to figure out a way for them to, you got to be a social worker, I think. You got to be able to read the situation and figure it out really quickly, because the young man that got gunned down in Philadelphia, 40 feet away, he got shot 14 times. He had a butter knife. The one police officer said they'd never been there. The mama goes on television and shows those same two cops were there 3 days prior. Now, you know, a butter knife, a 9mm, I don't know who's going to win that battle. And we know that they want to go home, but everybody else wants to go to their proper place. If it's jail, let it be jail. But they don't need to perish, die, or suffer because of the gung-ho cop. And think about it. This young fella that got shot in Philadelphia, he was mental. He was having a mental episode, you know, and they knew this dude. They've been there before, and they still took it to the extreme of it's you before me. And that's where it's wrong. That's where it's wrong.
I think you're right in that. Now, as it relates, what do you think, Selwyn? What is your message? What's the message you want to get out about George and the future of your nephew's legacy?
We got to have everybody just simple. If you can treat people the way that you want to be treated, life goes on in a specific way. Because normal isn't what we want, because normal is black people getting gunned down. Normal is black people getting they built public housing projects for black people. The reason why the more black people die of coronavirus is because the history of medical attention that we've had. You know, a black person's 5 times more likely to catch coronavirus and die because of it. And it's because of just a systemic racism with the healthcare. Schooling. Well, you know, if we had good teachers in the schools that we attended, instead of having to go to an academy, things would be different. So there's a whole lot of things that have to deal with racism. It just isn't about a police officer shooting, you know, a black man. It's about the whole system. So, and policing is just a small portion, but unfortunately, that stands out a heck of a lot more. I think I'm froze, am I?
I still
I
see
can hear you.
We see you.
Yeah, I
Okay,
can see you.
okay.
Yeah.
I see,
One
man.
of ARC's, ARC's overarching goal is to eradicate racism and promote anti-racism throughout our communities, countries, and the world. So what is one message that you have for our coalition members and for our, and for people who are looking at ARC and maybe considering joining?
First of all, first time I get to face see you, Jeremiah, I love your hair, man. Love the hair. Love the hair. Love the hair. Love the hair. Hey, man, keep the path that you've been traveling. Keep your enthusiasm. Keep your passion for this alive, and don't quit. Because the reason why things change and the reason why things don't change is because people don't communicate and do anything about it. You know, and hey, I want to be a member of ARC, you know, sign me an notice in, you know what I'm saying? But all I know is this, it's people like yourself. And once again, it's people like your parents that make, and Denzel, that make a beautiful human being like yourself sit here and talk to a Selwyn Jones, talk to an Otis Harper, to try to make a change. And dog, let me tell you, I can't even express the positivity or just a respect factor of you as a human being to be put in this situation. And you know, man, your mama and your daddy and Danzel, I hope I got his name right, have done a fine job in getting your mind right for equality for all. And that's just beautiful, man. I'm telling you.
Well, let me flip this around, Sal. Let me flip this around, Sal, and let me ask Jeremiah, what were your thoughts and what were your feelings as you watched, you know, and like Selwyn, I've only watched bits and pieces of his nephew's death because it's just something that I have trouble seeing. But you're in the Minnesota area, the Twin Cities, if you will. What were your thoughts, and what were the conversations that some of you and your friends had after this event took place, and how did it affect you as a young man, but also as a young white man in America?
Absolutely, yeah. Initially, of course, I was mortified just to see so apparently the treatment that people of color face, and to know that it was happening in my backyard, just 25 minutes away, or 15 without traffic. And it forced me to confront the reality that racial disparities and racist systems and policies exist and permeate every aspect of our lives. And it really forced me to challenge my preconceived notions about race and my just perceptions of equitable systems, and forced me to see that the systems that I'd been benefited by, that had benefited me, were not equitable in any way. And nearly all the success that I had experienced was, at least in some part, due to my privileged upbringing, my privileged status. I'm a cishet white man, so I have all the privilege you can get, pretty much. And so it really just forced me to open my eyes and set me on the path that I'm continually trying to walk down, of recognizing problems in myself, recognizing my biases, and trying to point those out in other people, and learn all these, and re-educate myself, essentially. That's what I'm trying to do every day, just relearn all of the things that have been erased by white historians, that have been just whitewashed by our education system. And I suppose this answer is encompassing a lot of things.
No, it does, and I agree with you. I think it's fair. What you're saying is that, you know, Black history is American history. It's not. It's a part of American history. Slavery is a part of American history. And what you said, I think, is true. Is that you have to re-educate yourself. You have to come to terms with things that maybe you didn't. Somebody who's not a person of color may not want to come to terms with, and understand that, hey, maybe while I didn't have a hand in actively doing that, I still benefit from it. And how do I correct these systems such that we can all benefit and grow as a country, not just necessarily, well, we're going to continue down the same path that we've been on. And I think it's important that people, young people especially, because there are a lot of older people that are stuck in their ways. They have a power structure, they have an economic structure, and they're not about to change it. But young people like you and your friends can come along and say, hey, wait a minute. We've benefited from these policies, but now we need to make sure that everybody benefits, not just me because I happen to be white or I happen to be born into a privileged family. Maybe other people want to go to Hastings College, but never even knew Hastings College exists because they're not familiar with that experience. You know, I didn't know some of the great schools existed because of my background, and I went to a very good school. But wow, I said, wait a minute, there are other schools. So I think it's important that we all continue to learn, but more importantly, especially the younger generation, to say, hey, look, and I think it's incumbent upon me to say that I think it's very self-aware of you to say, hey, look, wow, I've really benefited, and I didn't really know I was benefiting, but, and here you are, you're talking to two guys that are 50 plus years old, Donzel.
Hey. Denzel don't want you to tell his age. He's really,
but you know, I think it's very impressive that you come up here at such a young age. Two older Black men who've had experiences that you can. I mean, we could sit here all day in this webinar, and we can talk over police stories all day. I can give you 20 off the top of my head from experiences. I can give you experience, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to maintain the message of George Floyd and make sure we continue down the right path And unfortunately, you know, Selwyn had to sacrifice his uncle, but hopefully because of that sacrifice, we will all make progress as people.
You have no idea. When I was explaining who you were, Jeremiah, to Otis,
Mm-hmm.
he thought I was talking about a pretty girl. I like, Otis, I'm married, man. He's like, man, you sure got a lot of passion for this, boy. You are just, I'm not pulling your chain. I'm not, riding your back. All I'm just telling you is, if we could have 2% of the world that felt like you, and the thing about your feeling is, you're not only feeling, you're doing something about it.
Taking action. Taking
That's
action.
beautiful. That is beautiful. 18 years old, man. Dog, you just have no idea how much that impresses me. That is like one of the most phenomenal things I've ever seen or heard. That's crazy. You just keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you. Well, I feel like what I'm doing is really the basic minimum expectation for being a good citizen in the way that our world is functioning. But
and see, I think that's an important position to take, Jeremiah, is to remember that what you're doing, with all due respect, is not asking for anything crazy. You're asking for fair treatment of all people, equality, respect. Your anti-racism, asking for people to not be racist, is not saying, hey, look, we want you to give something to another group of people. What we're saying is, look, we just want you to not discriminate against Black people, not discriminate against Latino people. We just want fairness and equality for all people, like Selwyn said. And I think it's important to remember that and say, look, we're not asking for any special treatment. We're just saying, hey, look, can we get the system such that it benefits everybody equally and not some of us over others? I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that it's not a ridiculous thing to ask for. And
No, it really isn't. We're the only race of people that's had to negotiate about our life. Think about this, y'all. 60 years ago, I could go to Minneapolis and I couldn't sit down in a restaurant, or I couldn't drink from the same water fountain that Jeremiah drank from.
Mm-hmm.
We had dogs sick on us. Why? Because of power and control. And that's basically what racism is. It's power and control. One race gets to tell all the other races how it's going to be, when it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you deviate from any of that, guess what? Hey, prime example. Like I said, I live in a town. We got 4 Black people. 3 of them are mine. And, excuse me, before my nephew died, I was a really, really, really good, constructive human being. Me and my wife renovated the motel by ourselves, and I was the hardest working person in the world. The day that my nephew got buried, and they started in on the Confederate, somebody called me and says, hey man, do you realize there's a Confederate flag on the police uniform? I like, heck no, you crazy. I was just sitting in the parking lot of my motel and talked to him for 30 minutes. Now I'm sitting 2 feet from him. I never noticed it. Out of sight, out of mind, I reckon. But from that out of sight, out of mind, I have been a drug dealer. I need to move back to Africa. I'm not a part of the community. Why should one guy come into a town and tell everybody what to do? Meaning, we could, and one dude stands in the council meeting and says, hey man, let's be real. The flag probably shouldn't be up here, but why would we change it for a dead end's uncle because he lives in our town? He ain't got no rights. Now, and if you read the article in the Star Tribune, you see the whole story about what these people think, how they reacted. I get an ugly text every day. If it's not, well, hey, George Floyd's been dead for 240 days. No, George Floyd has been sober for 240 days because he's dead. And just heinous stuff that people send me. They send me pictures of babies or women, women holding their babies. And George Floyd, hey, this is a stick up. And why? Why? Because of power and control.
I think it's interesting. The one thing I found interesting, especially as it relates to the Confederate flag, is how open people and how some people really want to hold on to a symbol of racism that emanated from the South and have trouble giving up that symbol. And they're not giving it up for you, Selwyn. They're not giving it up for George Floyd. They're giving it up because it's the right thing to do. The South lost the war. The Confederate flag should be banned across the country. It should be a federal crime if you, it should be a federal crime if you're waving it, or it should not be anywhere in this country except for maybe some museums here and there, just so people can understand the history of it. But why are people, I just don't understand why some people are so willing to hold on to these racist images and their racism as it is. I mean, I don't know.
That's how they were raised. They were raised that a N is Lord in life. And keep in mind, we were only counted as 3/5 of a person back in the 1800s because we were.
But this is 2020, Selwyn. This is not the 1800s. I'm
There's
not saying it was right
there's
then. It was obviously wrong. But how do we get people in 2020? And this country seems to be one of the most polarizing times that I can remember in my lifetime. And in large part, it seems like Donald Trump and Jeremiah, it's your show. I'm just here to help. But please jump in and how you feel about Donald Trump and him stoking the flames of racism, stoking the flames of white supremacy, stoking the flames of hatred.
Dog, if you were in the middle when this stuff happened, you either jump from one side to the other, and if you jump to that other side, they don't mind telling you. Now think about this. I've been living here for 4 years. I've been coming here for 18 years. Most of these people I generally would think would be even. And once the situation happened and the flag come up, I was the dumbest N that has ever been born to a woman. Now, because of what? Because of a flag. Because of a simple flag that means absolutely nothing to a lot of people. If you display the SWAT sticker and you're, I don't know, what's that, 2 years in jail automatically?
In Germany, it is illegal to display the swastika,
yeah.
Yes. But in America, there are Americans that still walk around with a symbol of hatred and racism called the Confederate flag and wave it proudly in this country.
Yep. And we are going to get a legislature, so if that flag is being displayed, that is a symbol of hate and racism.
One thing, I'll jump in real quick, Otis. This is a great conversation, but there are a number of questions that people are typing into the chat, which is great.
My chat is down, so if you can, I'm going to have to jump out and jump back in just because. All right, I'll be right back.
That's good, and I'm sure Jeremiah will chair and ask those questions. But I did want to make a couple comments. I just think this is a great conversation. I really appreciate everything Selwyn's saying. I would tell the group who's participating, please check out our website, joinarc.org. Many of the things that Selwyn is talking about are reflected there, even starting with the conversation about what impact has Donald Trump had. I just released a podcast yesterday that goes into extreme detail, explaining that this is not about politics. This is about values. This is about right and wrong. Don't let anyone try to fool you that this is about Republicans and Democrats. It's not. It's about values. It's about whether Trumpism is right or it's wrong. We believe it's wrong. We believe it's racist. We believe that it's not only good enough to get our country to move towards a path of not being racist. We believe we should move to anti-racism, which means to what Selwyn's been saying. There are structures and systems in our country that are designed to penalize one group and raise up other groups. And we believe that that's not fair. And if you really want to change the country in the way that Black people are treated, the way that Latinx people are treated, even broaden it to just hate in general, the way that some people are subjugated, it's recognizing that these systems and structures are in place and being willing to stand up, speak out, and take action to stop and destroy these structures from being in place. Whether it's the criminal justice system, as Selwyn described, whether it's the drastic difference in home ownership and wealth creation that exists, whether it's education, all of these things are a result of systems and structure that were put in place post-slavery that simply have never been addressed. So we believe that we got to do that. And then back to Selwyn's point, we believe exactly what the former president and national hero of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, said. That is, no one was born knowing to hate another person because of the color of their skin. They were taught to hate. And because they were taught to hate, they can be taught to love. And so our view is to eradicate racism and get anti-racism to spread around the world. We need to get people like those of you who are listening on here today to commit to saying, I'm going to educate myself on these structures and systems so I can recognize these differences and disparities. I'm going to transform myself to have the courage and to be supported by this group, like people like Jeremiah, this 18-year-old kid that's inspiring two 50-year-old guys like me and Selwyn. There are a number of Jeremiahs, like his brother Ben, who's on the call right now, and his parents, but also my daughter Sierra, who's on the call, who's 25. There are 3 young ladies that are helping us right now that are still in high school that were on a call with us yesterday, that are focused on using social media to grow the idea of art. It's about each person saying, I'm going to change myself, and then I'm going to target the people in my personal network, the people I know, the grandparents, like Selwyn said, that might be racist, the uncle I've got that might not be on the right side, and I'm going to start changing them. I'm personally going to take it upon myself to change them. Because to Selwyn's point, if it was passed down and taught to them from when they were little kids, it's going to take someone they love and respect to unteach that. That's what ARC is all about. So I just wanted to make sure that the folks who are listening here today, take a look at our website, start to learn and see some of the things that we're trying to do, and join our coalition. And we guarantee that you're going to see we can make a difference. One of my friends is on the call here. The Great Wall of China was not built overnight. It took over 2,000 years, many dynasties, but they all recognized that for their community to move forward and have this great achievement done, they had to cooperate over time to keep building on it. That's what this war against racism is going to be about. It's going to be about us every day knowing there are going to be setbacks. Not everyone's going to be on our side. Keep working, keep chipping away, and slowly but surely we're going to make it happen if each of us takes it upon ourselves to change, to transform, and then have the courage to speak out, stand up, take action with the people in your network. So I just wanted to make that point. I'll turn it back to you, Jeremiah.
Love that. Love that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Donzel. You suggested we hop to the audience questions. And so there's one here from Tommy Fang that's talking about how he's from an Asian community, and a lot of people that are Asian that he knows are not feeling like, because this issue doesn't affect their race directly, they aren't really buying in very much. So what kind of message can you deliver to change the mindset of these people and help them become more engaged in anti-racism?
Otis, that's on you.
You know, as Martin Luther King said, a threat to justice anywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So while it may not affect one particular group of people today, it may affect them tomorrow. I would encourage everybody, especially not only white people, but people of Asian descent, Indian descent, East Asian descent, to speak against racism, because racism against anyone is unfair. It's not right. We just happen to be 2 black men that have experienced our racism, but I don't encourage racism against Asian people. I don't understand what they have experienced, but I am certainly willing to listen, and I'm certainly willing to jump on board and say, hey, look, that's not right. I know in law firms, and I'm a licensed attorney in New York and Connecticut, and it's, you know, there's not a lot of Asian partners in law firms in New York. There are not a lot of black partners in law firms in New York. Now, that's part of systemic racism that has taken place throughout history, because they don't promote black attorneys. They don't hire black attorneys. They don't give them the prime cases. They don't allow them to flourish. But all of a sudden, you know, another group of people continues to move up the ladder. Why is that? Okay, these are the types of things that people in power have to take upon themselves and say, hey, look, We have to create diversity in America. We have to create diversity is good for America. That's what this country was built on. You know, not only black slaves that were brought here against their will, but also immigrants of Irish, Italian, and you know, every other descent, Mexican, Latino, whatever. But that's what this country, it's an amalgamation of immigrants, and that's part of what makes this country great is the diversity. So I implore anybody who's got a position that they feel like needs to be advanced, hey, bring it up and let's talk about it, because I'm here for it.
You know, the only other thing I would add, I think that's exactly right on. I would also say that back to the point that diversity is our strength. I would argue it has been our strength. I would argue that what's happening now is we have someone in the White House who is using racism and hate to divide people. And this division has worked for him. I hope it doesn't continue to work, but it has worked for him to get him elected. But it's weakened the country. The United States cannot survive if we continue to fracture. The way that this country was successful was many different people coming together with a common cause for good. Yes, each of us individually strives for excellence. There's poverty, certainly. There's wealth generation and huge differences and gaps, and there's all sorts of problems. But overall, in general, most Americans would always say at some point, the betterment of the country is what we're interested in. That's what eventually got us to overcome many of the struggles we're talking about historically. We can't overcome this right now because we have lost that sense of common good because of the tone in the country and who's in the White House. That's why we believe, whether it's Asian Americans, whether it's indigenous, whether it's gay people, whether it's African American, whether it's transgender, whoever it is, we can't allow hate to divide our country, because we will continue to weaken and we will not be able to move our country forward for everyone. So when folks say, well, it's not really affecting me, it's not affecting you now. It will affect you.
I think that's a great point, because I think even in what you're saying is accurate, because it's called the United States of America. It's not called the Divided States of America. And what your organization is called, it's called the Anti-Racism Commitment Coalition. So it has to be done by groups of people, not just by individuals who are going to stand alone on one side or the other and pretend. This is, if we're going to be a United States, and granted, I don't expect 100% agreement 100% of the time, but like you said, we cannot advance and progress as a divided nation. It's not good. On some level, we're going to have to come together on some of the major issues, if you will, or at very least agree to say, okay, well, okay, we're cool on that, but we'll let it be for now.
They haven't let us come to the table and sit and talk. You know that Donzel know that we have not been invited to that table and said, hey, black man, tell me what your thoughts are. We don't ever get to negotiate our thoughts. We're told what we have to do it, how we have to do it. That's going to be probably one of the biggest challenges that we have, because nobody's going to say, hey, black people, come over here and let's sit and let's figure out what's going to work for you. It's always what works for everybody else, and we have to go along and play the game.
Well, I think one of the things that changed that gives me hope, Selwyn, is, like you said, Jeremiah, and him being here and being willing to have this conversation with three black gentlemen that happen to be probably twice his age and then some, but that's beside
Stop
the
talking
point.
like that, man.
But if we can get young people like him into elected positions and powerful positions where they can implement policies that are fair and equitable across not just race but gender and transgender and whatever the case may be, then we can all come together and say, hey, look, but it's going to require young people like him, like his friends, that are going to sit there and say, hey, look, we can change the world, you know. And I think this is a good start. You know, Jeremiah Cox, I know it's a lot of pressure on you, but you are the future, so you have to change the world, my friend.
And
accepted.
well, brother, you're doing a great job. And do me a favor, Aldous Harper. Stop reminding me that I'm 38 years older than Jeremiah, okay? Leave it alone, man. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Man.
You think I'm reminding you, and I'm reminding myself.
And I got a 4-year-old too, man. And that's the reason why this battle has to be fought.
Absolutely.
Because I don't want Jeremiah's kids being condemned because they like black people. I don't want my babies, for people to look at my babies because their skin is darker than theirs, you know, just like yours, you know? So
Yes.
I'm in this to win it. People ask me all the time, when do you ever slow down? I don't think I've slowed down since May the 26th. Don't have no intentions of slowing down, you know? Because I've got to get this in while I can get it in. I've got to. We got to. We can all make a change.
Absolutely, yeah. Otis, do you want to jump to some of the question and answer?
One of the questions that I found interesting is from a Clint Faust. He said, there's been a departure from the fairness doctrine in cable news and thus a long-term evolution of, quote, fake news. Selwyn, are there changes within the various forms of media that could be required of journalism and reporting that could diminish and not affirm racism within the media and move toward reducing racism in general? How do you think the media plays into all of this? And can we, or should we even put some policies in place to make sure that there's a certain inherent, well, that the news is actually reporting the news and not necessarily opinion op-ed pieces every time we turn it on?
You know, man, my experience with the media since this situation has not been a bad experience. And you're going to have times where some people are going to emphasize more things than others. Before, I figure 6 or 7 years ago, there weren't the media attention on situations like this. And now we're seeing and hearing about, I bet you I've heard about 30 different scenarios that's happened since George's life has been taken. You know, so the media can make it better or worse. I just think that we need them. And they say things that we want to say, but we can't say. And sometimes they should shut up. But generally for me, I think they did me pretty good.
I was going to ask you that. How do you think the media has treated the legacy of your nephew and this this tragic event throughout from start until now? Do you think they've been fair? Do you think they've been accurate? Do you think they've told the truth in the way that you want it told?
Exactly, man. All the media people that I have dealt with have pretty much told it how I related to them. They've said, they've given my message, and you can tell those that don't really care about how we communicate, how we're thinking, because you don't hear from them. But I've got, I don't know, I've probably got 30 different reporters on my phone that I can call and say, hey, man, listen, this is what I'm feeling. Well, what do you want to do? How can we put this out there? How can we express this? So I think we need media because that's the easiest way for us to get to multiple people. Think about it, dog. In 1968, how many people would have seen that video if it would have came out? Not many, but the whole world has literally seen this video because of media. Like I said, I think it's the point of everybody is sick and tired and everybody wants change because before George, they want a lot of change being made. You know, Breonna Taylor, is that her name? Breonna Taylor?
Yes.
Okay. Her family didn't care. Michael Brown, their families did not go at this relentless like we are. You know, I'm relentless. I don't care if I get a nickel. I don't care if I get a dime. Doesn't matter because I've got to look out for what my nephew died for. And he died for all of us to be equal.
You know, it's interesting you brought up, we're talking about the media, and one of the things I'm reminded that Carl Douglas, who's a former member of the OJ legal team and has been a civil rights attorney in Southern California, Los Angeles area for over 40 years. And one of the things that he comments on all the time is he said, police brutality has not increased. It's just being broadcast more because of the advent of these little camera phones that we have, and everybody has one. So now it's easier to catch people, whether they're police or otherwise, doing things that should be doing, or should, whatever, I forgot the English, but anyway, should not be doing. But and that's his position as an individual, and he spoke very eloquently of your nephew. And I mean, I would challenge you, if you want to listen to him, go find his podcast, because he does a lot of great work on civil rights. And, you know, he's good. Not that I'm discounting Jeremiah's work, because we're going to continue to ARCC, and we're going to continue to fight the good fight and do it the right way.
Jeremiah.
Yes, Selwyn.
I want you to challenge Mr. Harper into showing his face in Minneapolis the same time as your buddy shows his face, and we're going to go by AJ's Fish and Chicken to eat. Man.
Listen, Jeremiah, I will accept that challenge, and as long as it comes in, we can schedule it in a time that works for all three of us and your parents. I would love to join you, Donzel, Mr. Cox. Yeah, we can all work together and make that happen over the next few months. I've never been to Minneapolis. I am not coming there when it's in the winter, so I'm telling you that right now. I know you only get 2 weeks of summer, but I'll be there sometime in those 2 weeks.
You're smart. You're smart. But yeah, man, we got to figure out how me and Otis can improve or help art in many ways, and we'll be glad to come down, you know?
Absolutely.
And you know, make sure AJ's Fish and Chicken off Lake. That's the grease, man. That's grease. Straight to you. Can't see, can't think, but your palate's good, man. Let's take some Q&A, y'all, because I've got another appointment in about 10 minutes.
I think we're good. We don't have any open questions.
There's actually one more here.
Oh, there's one more? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
From Kitty Grace. What's the best lesson we can teach our kids? As a college teacher, how can I help in my classrooms?
Yeah. Say the things that you really need to say, and the books that are written to teach Black kids about Black history, there's a whole lot of distortion there. Yeah, there's a whole lot of distortion. Otis?
I think we just need to be fair, open, and honest about the history of this country. I think as a teacher, and I actually, before I became a lawyer, was looking into teaching. I didn't go that way, but what I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, and I've talked to teachers, I just want teachers to teach children the truth. Like you said in the beginning of this podcast, let's not whitewash history. Let's stop thinking that these young people who happen to be white are going to get their feelings hurt when they find out the truth. If you have to teach a young child who happens to be white that slavery was a terrible experience in the American history, yes, that's the facts, okay? We teach them about a lot of other things. We should be okay about teaching them about slavery. And again, I harken back to what I said earlier. Black history is American history. It's no different. We are as part of America as anybody else that was brought here, however you got here. Black history is American history. Slavery is American history. And we need to come forward and think about these things and teach people, because as long as we try to sweep things under the rug, we get further and further away from the truth. And then when people come out and they teach young people about the truth, they say, wait a minute, that's not the truth that I learned. Well, you didn't learn the truth. You learned a sanitized version. Let's stop sanitizing history. And at the end of the day, treat people like Selwyn said, treat people how you want to be treated. If you treat them with the respect, dignity, and honor that you want for yourself, your wives, your daughters, your children, your friends, whether they're Black, white, Puerto Rican, gay, straight, anything, treat people with respect. and be a little bit self-aware, I think this country would be better off as long as people just say, hey, look, I respect that person as a person. I may not respect every decision that they made, every political, whatever, but let's just respect people as people, and then we can move forward and say, hey, look, he's not a bad guy. I know that guy. What are you talking about? Everybody makes mistakes, but we can move forward past them. Trust me, we've all had them. With the exception of Jeremiah, he hasn't been on the planet long enough to make too many.
Yeah, 18 years old. I got shoes older than him, man. This is what.
Listen, I want to say thank you for having me. That's all I can say. I want to thank Selwyn for inviting me and letting me be a part of it. Denzel, it was a pleasure meeting you. Mr. Cox, Jeremiah, it was an honor to meet you. And like Selwyn said, if there's anything we can do to help as a team, as a group, as men, then I'd be happy to help you.
Thank you.
I reiterate what Otis said. Jeremiah, you just don't know the feeling that I got. First of all, Otis, when I talked to him on the phone, I thought I was talking to a 40-year-old man.
Listen, I didn't know he was 18, so did I. I'm not going to lie. The way he talks and the way he carries himself on the phone was impressive. I said, what is this guy, about 24, 25? He sounds like he should be out of college, not like he's in college.
Like, I'm a freshman. I'm thinking, whoa. So, Mama, Pops, have Jeremiah give you my email, give you my numbers, give it to Donzel, and I can promise you, we will all hook up when I come to Minneapolis. And kids, just remember this. Education and decision-making process is going to carry you throughout life, whether you want it to be good life or bad life. It's all about decisions. Treat people as you want to be treated. Respect the next person. You don't have to love them, but you don't have to hate them because of the color of their skin. Thank you, Jeremiah. You call me in a little while. Donzel, I appreciate you, brother. Love what you're doing. I want to be a part of that. And you Dallas Cowboy wearing shirt, tie. I don't even know what to say about you, man. Love you, boy.
It's Sunday, man.
Mama, Papa, you did good.
Thank you so much for having us, Jeremiah.
God bless you.
Thank you, Otis, and thank you, Selwyn, for offering your time and for coming to donate your time to us. This has been truly an awesome opportunity for us.
My pleasure, young man. It's all for you, buddy. It's all for you.
Thank you.
Keep the message going. Keep the message going. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. And for everyone who's tuning in, you can please commit to ARC. You can learn more at joinarcc.org, and you can learn about our organization, what we're doing. We have podcasts every week. We're constantly updating our social media feeds, and we're always releasing new information, new suggested reading, book clubs, etc. There's always something going on that you can engage in to continue your anti-racism journey at ARC.
One more thing. Oh, this is probably to shut up. Oh, what happened?
My camera fell. No,
Otis is probably going to tell me to shut up, but I'm going to say it anyhow. You know what we need to do?
What does that sound?
We need to have a block party.
I'm not going to tell you to shut up. You're a grown man. You know how to talk.
You know, we need to have a block party. You know, have the catfish and the fried chicken and the filet mignon. Have them all right there. Some fume gouillon. Anyhow, but let's have a block party.
All right, listen, thank you to everybody who joined us. I appreciate your time. And thanks for listening to all of us.
Keep your head up. Do the right thing.
That's right. Jeremiah, Donzel, Mr. Cox, everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go Cowboys.
Bye. Oh, shut up.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.
My info.
Vote.
Thank you so much.
Vote.
So we'll talk.
Later, baby.
All right.
Bye.